get learnt bitches during my intro. I had to put it up there, man. That shit was funny. Hey everybody, welcome to this special Christmas Eve edition of Cult of Color. My name is Nomad. I'll be your colorist for the evening. Not expecting a huge crowd tonight because Christmas Eve is family time for most people. For me, it's just another day. So whatever you do to get you through your day is fine by me. Tonight we are focusing on Cult of Color 101, so we're starting with the basics, and I even have, I can see my concurrent viewer count is going to drop as soon as I say this. I have a PowerPoint for you guys. Sorry. But I want to talk through these basics before we start getting into examples and what have you. But before that, we got a couple videos to show you. Off Axis, aka Marcel, posted one of Falcon Rad's long range videos, so we're going to take a look at that. And then we have Songbird FPV, who has been practicing with his color grading, and it looks pretty good, so we're going to see one of his videos this evening as well. I don't have any new videos for you because it's been pissing and shitting rain for weeks, and it was sunny today, but I didn't feel like trying to rush to charge any batteries just to go fly in the neighborhood yet again, and I didn't really have any plans, so. Let's see, who's in the chat? Flexo3D, welcome. Bartman, dude. Technique FPV. Lambo Drive Zambo, good to see ya. Chatty Kimmy, good to see ya. Thanks for joining us this evening. You guys can see my my nuclear toaster or what have you, my retro futuristic kitchen design wallpaper there. So I've done a couple of things to try to ease the load, so to speak. I did away with the whole magnified thing with the mouse cursor, and I've scaled everything up on my screen, so hopefully when we actually get into Resolve, you're going to be able to see that silliness, and it won't be super tiny. You won't have to blow it up, but it's still 4K 60. Somehow my computer's doing it just fine today, so I guess she's gonna roll on. So let's have a see look at let's do this thing here. We're gonna fade.
Most frustrating.
No, that's not it. We need to punch this in here. Just bear with me a second. Update. Is that seriously an ad? Oh god, I hate ads. There's no way I can log into my YouTube account with the built-in YouTube built-in browser, so. Oh god.
Wow, yes.
Please make it stop.
Hi, thanks
Fucking
for
hell.
joining me for another long-range video.
So here's Falcon Rad.
Well, this week,
some long-range stuff.
I'm flying the mountain that was across the valley from the one that I flew last week, and it's the same build that I'm flying. Also last week I went over covering the video system and talked a bit about the drone. But one of the things I didn't talk about was the control link that I'm using, so my crossfire and transmitter. And also this week I'm using different batteries than I was last week, because this week's flight I'm going a little further out. It's a longer flight, so this time I'm using two 18650 6S packs. They're made out of multi-cell P28A cells. So these are 2,800 milliamp hours each pack.
Interesting.
For a total of 5,600 milliamp hours at 6S voltage. And the control link that I didn't talk about last time. I always use a diversity receiver for my long range builds. So I've got a vertically polarized antenna in the back and a horizontally polarized antenna in the front. This just gives you the best chance of, no matter what the orientation of the drone is, you always have an antenna that's going to be...
Keeps you out of your knolls.
...for communicating back to your transmitter. Just makes it that much less likely to lose control link when you happen to be pointing, say, the null tip of your...
So I just wanted to jump in here for a sec. Let me flip back. Where are we? I don't know, man. Let me flip back. Shut up. So I just want to jump in. So diversity in the FPV world, now I'm not sure about Crossfire, but I know in Express LRS, they say diversity, but it's actually not diversity. It's multiple receivers, and it's just choosing which receiver has the best signal, and I don't know if Crossfire works the same way. In radio, when you have a diversity of receiver, you are taking the two receivers and canceling out the noise. So anything the two receivers don't agree on is removed from the signal chain, and anything the two receivers do agree on is what's left, and that's how you cut down on noise. So you can use, like, I have a VHF vertical in my house. I'm a ham radio guy. If I had some kind of like noise in the house, I could take a magnetic antenna and use that to cancel out the whatever electromagnetic resonance might be in my house. So diversity in FPV might be different than actual diversity in radio, but it just basically means multiple receivers, and he's absolutely right. It does give you the best chance regardless of the orientation. It kind of removes the null zones from the quad. So if you can set that up, it's always good to do that. I told it was a little quiet. Let me see if I can fix that.
Antenna back home. This part of the antenna pointing out here has a very weak signal. So if you're behind some trees a few kilometers out and pointing your antenna like this back towards you, you could actually fail safe. But when you have the diversity antenna back here, this one will take over and give you a good strong signal back to the home point. And then if you're for some reason in this orientation, with this antenna with its null point pointing back, then this one has a good strong signal because of its orientation going back to the home point. And on my transmitter,
is that volume better?
I'm still using my old X-Lite transmitter. I actually have a Radio Master TX16S that I'm gonna start using, but I'm having an issue with the firmware, and it doesn't feel right. I can't get it to feel right. So I'm still using this old thing for now. And it's got a TrueRC TrueMox 915 antenna on it. I usually will use that horizontally polarized like this when I'm flying long range. And that's plugged into I think this is the V2 of the Nano TX. So I believe it goes up to 1 watt, but I always fly with it set to 500 milliwatts. I don't find I usually need more than that. Where I fly, there's no interference really. It's just the distance that I'm dealing with and some trees. So 500 milliwatts is plenty for how I fly or where I fly. Well, that's enough about gear for now. Let's get on to the long range footage, and I'll do some more talking after the flight gets started.
Want to upgrade but still
What
paying
the
off your
fuck is
lost
this
phone?
shit? You
Break
bastards.
free from 3-year device contracts. Switch to T-Mobile.
Shut up. Fucking ads. So this dude, when he says long range, he means long range.
The Molicel P28A.
Don, what's up, bud?
Lithium-ion cells
Good
that I
to
was
see
just
you.
showing you there, those 218-650 packs. These are my favorite batteries to fly long range with. They're 2800 milliamp hours for each pack, so the two of them together is 5600 milliamp hours. I find I can usually get a good about 5000 milliamp hours out of it, which that's usually enough to do most long range flights that I end up coming across. They're definitely lighter than using two of the 21700 packs, and I think you definitely got more amp draw performance, or whatever you want to call it. You can pull more current from two of these than you can from one 5000 milliamp hour 21700 pack. So I think these give me enough.
Same to you, Don.
Enough current
Appreciate
to
you
be
stopping
able
in,
to,
man.
fight my way out of a strong wind if I happen to come across it, and it gives you enough power to pull out of a dive without being too heavy. It's kind of the perfect sort of sweet spot for a long range FPV battery. I actually just got some Molicel P28B cells, which are pretty much the same as the P28As, except I think they handle the cold a little bit better, and they also put out a few more amps as well. So I'm looking forward to making those packs and seeing how those fly. I might possibly do a video about that, I'm not sure yet. We'll see how my spare time goes over the holidays. I really love flying mountains like this, just going up the
These gullies are following the waterfalls, doing it at like eye level, so it's almost like you're hiking up, but really fast. This is one of my favorite parts of the flying long-range FPV, is just going and exploring up these different gullies and valleys up into the mountains.
Dude, same.
Here, this part, you can see
I'm getting better with long range.
Here. That's because this
but
ridge on the
it
left
takes some
that we're
serious
passing by
serious
cuts
nuts.
in front of my line of sight.
Having
so
lost
I have
a
to get
quad
little
this
higher up
way.
there to be able to keep video clear through it.
It's got analog video. That
I
scares
think
me
I
too.
managed to get back down low again here soon. Yeah, or far enough away from that high part of that ridge back there to get back down now. So same as all my flights, I'm flying at 800 milliwatts here for my VTX, as far as, you know, when I'm flying on analog. I don't think I've ever actually done a long range flight at anything higher than 800 milliwatts on the VTX. Which brings to mind that JetRC just asked me if I wanted to try out their new, how do I pronounce it, Meten VTX. It goes up to 2.5 watts. And I'm not sure I really need a whole bunch extra wattage on my VTX, but I don't know, it might be nice for some of those flights where I get in behind trees and the video starts getting a little bit patchy. The extra power might punch through the trees and help me get a bit clearer of a signal for some.
So here's another thing, wattage. It's a little bit of a, it's not a misnomer, it's just not understood well within the FPV community. So for instance, when people think like going to 2 watts from 1 watts, it's doubling your power. It's not actually doubling your power. Watts is a logarithmic scale. So in order, if you have 1 watt and you want to double your output power, you need to be able to transmit at 10 watts. That's double the power. Then 100 watts, then 1,000 watts. So there's a loss that happens as you get more and more powerful, diminishing gains. God damn my brain. So yeah, 1 to 2.5 watts is incremental increase in power. He's not going to have a huge difference. But when you're talking smaller, like when you're going from 10 milliwatts to 100 milliwatts, that's double the power. To a whole watt, that's double the power. So it's logarithmic in that way. Just thought I'd throw that out there.
Those flights. So I'm going to give this 2.5 watt Meten VTX from JetRC a try on my Rad Lion build.
Welcome back, Matt.
Take it far out and get behind some trees or something and see how this thing does. It's got a little mini fan on it and stuff for cooling, so it looks interesting. We'll see how things go with that.
Honestly, not sure, Flexo. It might have been a band plan change. I know the 1.2 gigahertz range is not wide, and might not have. You know how the FCC do.
All right, I finally made it up to the top of the mountain here. But now at this part, I'm trying to figure out which gully I wanted to fly down from the top. And I think this one here I'm looking at looks really cool. But now I'm turning back and checking, and I don't think I have proper line of sight to be able to get up in that side of it.
He is so far
So now
out.
I've come back and turned around and going to get at it. So I'm going to give it a try going up the right-hand side. I'm not too sure about my my line of sight for here, and that's why I'm going kind of slowly. Oh, there, you can see I bailed out pretty quick. Yeah, the line of sight didn't work out on that side, so going over to the left side now, and this one I think is the one I end up having some good clear view as I go up, or good clear video as I go up.
I'm just gonna put a 5G transceiver
nice backing
on my long-range quad.
Little tiny waterfall. This was in the very beginning of July, so most of the snow had melted by now.
This music
This
is
is actually
spiffy.
from a 2-week-long kind of road trip that I took in the summer, where I did just a whole bunch of long-range flights, and I've got so much footage left over from this. I can make videos all winter now with this amazing footage that I got over the summer. And I think this is the last final bit of the ascent up the mountain here.
Now the fun part begins.
Oh yeah, there's a cool gully going up the side. I'm gonna try that. But I think if I remember right, yeah, the video didn't work out going up there, that gully, the rock outcropping on the right there was taking the video out. So I decided to just
You don't need video. It's fine.
Take it straight on and fly right up the face of the cliff here. Well, normally I edit a bunch of this stuff out and just kind of make it a nice sort of flowing storybook edit. But yeah, I thought it'd be interesting for you to see what the whole flight is like when I don't chop out the parts where I'm looking around and trying to figure things out.
Dude, he's so high right now.
Very top now. There you can see the sort of the view of the Alpine up there, a few other little peaks. And now the fun part.
Most people have no clue that in
you've got to
2023
fucking
the
be
best
kidding
way
me.
to make money on Amazon is not with
Suck a dick.
Trying to get in as close as I feel safe doing at this rate of speed when video could get a little patchy at some random point. And it sure goes a whole lot faster going down than it does going up. I mean, I could fly faster going up, but I like going sort of slow and checking everything out. And then doing the opposite and just ripping down fast for the way back.
Bart.
And here's where I have to get up in the air again a little bit. I can't get down behind that ridge on the right that I'm just passing by. There we go. Now I can get back in tighter again and still have good view. Wow, and that's almost the whole mountain already. That took no time at all to fly back down. That's probably roughly 90 kilometers an hour, give or take 10 kilometers an hour for that whole way down. Because of course it's downhill, such a steep downhill that it really doesn't take much from the battery. The battery is really more just helping control and steer, and gravity's doing a lot of the work for the speed. And we are heading back home. This is where I parked, just on the side of the road here to
welcome, buddy.
up this mountain, and then this gully we're looking at right there. That was where last week's video was. I think I can take another look up there. Yeah, that's where last week's video was. It was up that gully, and that's it. Just coming back in for a landing now. It really doesn't come across quite the same in the GoPro, but it's I just find it so much fun, and it's so interesting just going and exploring up whatever mountain you think looks interesting, checking out the gullies and the waterfalls. It's always so beautiful when you get in close and look around and everything. All right, well, that's it for that one. Thanks.
Awesome. That was way cool. Oh boy. Yeah, so what do we got going on here? Flexo says I used an iPhone 5 hot glued to my Axial SCX10 and FaceTime for FPV crawling. Oh wow. Yeah, that, I guess for crawling, right, you don't have to react so quickly. It's kind of like driving a rover on Mars. Let's see here. We got another video here, a little bit shorter, I think. Songbird FPV. Let me figure out this horse shit again. Oh God, I hate you. This South Padre Island FPV compilation. Spiffy tunes. He's definitely got some color in there. I see he's got a vignette. Looks like the shadows have been pushed blue a little bit. I'm gonna let the highlights alone, probably because it was already pretty orange. Yeah, no worries, Matt. Have a good one, bro. Thanks for stopping in. Quit your bitchin' YouTube. There we go, got some speed. We need to get a GoFundMe together and get this boy an ND filter. Oh. Check out that lighthouse. I think I've been calling Lambo drives Zambo Matt this whole time because I get him confused with Matty's Drone World. Sorry, Brett. I'm new here, dude. I can't brain today. I have the dumb. Oh, okay, so here's why y'all are here. This is what I promised to do last week, and I know it's Christmas Eve, and I think the last thing anybody wants to do is watch PowerPoint on Christmas Eve, but here we go. We're doing the introduction to color theory, and we're just going to go over some basic terms. I will make this PowerPoint downloadable in the description in the doobly-doo down below, so you can download it and especially refer to the glossary as well. So much blue. Yes, all the blue. Indeed, all the blue. So without further ado, let me get my big fat head out the way. Yep. And let's get into it. Fundamentals. What's a fundamental? Well, color theory is not just an artistic concept, but a scientific exploration of color's impact on the human psyche and perception. It's a framework that guides the understanding of how colors mix, how they relate to each other, and how they can be used effectively in various mediums. This theory plays a crucial role in design, art, and marketing, and even in everyday decision making. Fucking PowerPoints, man. I hated this. I made this over the last couple of days, and I hated every second of it because I have to do a lot of PowerPoint slide decks during my normal job, and I fucking hate that. So it felt like I was doing a school assignment. But this is for you guys. So we're going to talk about color wheels, kind of the very broad representation of what color is to a colorist, right? There's three types of colors on a color wheel. There's the primary colors, which cannot be created by mixing other colors. There's secondary colors, which are created by mixing primary colors. And there's tertiary colors, which is created by mixing a primary with a secondary color. So to give you an idea what that looks like, here's the color wheel. This is a very simplified version of a color wheel. This just has your primaries, secondaries, and tertiaries. Trivia. Yeah. we could do some trivia. No, I don't have. Sorry, Kimmy, I don't have a Kahoot trivia today. It's a little hard to quiz people on color theory. So, but to just give you guys an idea, that's what your basic color wheel looks like. So, rolling back here, your primary colors, ones that can't be created by mixing. So your primaries are red, blue, and yellow. Then your secondaries are purple, green, and orange. And your tertiaries are all the other ones in between. And it makes a neat little rainbow circle. Pop quiz later, yeah. So you guys have heard about white balance and color temperature, and you hear about it when you dick around with your camera and everything. But if you look at the color wheel, everything that's towards my head is cool, and everything that's on the other side of the wheel is warm. And they have different purposes, right? This categorization is based on the color's perceived temperature. Warm colors like reds, oranges, and yellows is associated with warmth, energy, and passion. Cool colors like blues, greens, and purple are linked to calmness, serenity, and sometimes sadness. So, well, no, it's not. Not allowed to be ruined. So, you know, not just picking your white balance or, you know, setting your white balance properly, but choosing to make your scene warm or cold, or certain aspects of your scene warm or cold, can help elicit certain emotional responses from your audience. Right. So, grading versus correction. This is, I think, where a lot of the misunderstanding of what color grading is in social media kind of like this is where it rears its ugly head, right? Color correction is the technical process of fixing color issues and ensuring the consistency throughout the footage. Basically, you want to take whatever footage you have and make it look as true to life as possible. So that's adjusting contrast, exposure, and saturation. Color grading is the artistic part. This is a creative part. That's what you do when you're creating a specific look. When we're talking about the warm or cool, right? Using warm or cool colors in certain aspects of the footage to elicit a certain emotional response from your audience. So the creative part, toning your shadows, pushing your highlights, adding, you know, fancy shit, right? That stuff is the color grading part. Color correction always comes first in every case, and also known as a technical grade, which would be your color correction. And then your creative look would be the color grading process. The key elements to color correction: exposure and contrast. These elements are crucial in defining visual clarity and mood of the footage. Exposure relates to how light or dark an image is, while contrast deals with the difference between the darkest and lightest parts of the image. So when you hear about exposure and contrast, especially contrast, dealing with the darkest and the lightest parts of the image, the other side of that during acquisition would be considered dynamic range. So how much light can you get before you lose that information? How much dark can you get before you lose that information? So a really great example of this, something you can try next time you're in your car or something like that in the middle of the daytime. Look down at your feet, right? You can see, like, your eyeballs have amazing dynamic range. You can look down at your feet and you can see your feet clearly. They're not too dark, they're not too bright, but then in your peripheral vision you can also see outside, right? Perfectly. It's perfectly exposed in your eyeball. That's really, really high dynamic range. Cameras have yet to even get close to where the human eye is, which is a shame. So now we talk color science. So we started on color theory, right? The whole idea of colors, what they are, how we use them, how they're created. Color science talks about more of the technical aspects of it. So you've heard me prattle on endlessly about color space, right? Rec 709, Rec 2020, you know, so there's a whole bunch of different color spaces. Ultimately, though, they are all subsets of each other and all subsets of the visual spectrum, and even some of the color spaces. Well, one of the color spaces Adobe ProPhoto RGB can actually contain colors that aren't visible to the human eye, so that's fun. Color spaces are abstract mathematical models describing the way colors can be represented as numbers or coordinates. Different color spaces are used for various purposes like print, web, or film. Understanding color spaces is essential for ensuring the colors are consistent across different mediums. So if you look at that, what's called an XY plot, you can see Rec 709 is the smallest of the triangles in there. Rec 709 is basically your normal video, right? Whenever you're watching regular TV, TikTok, Instagram's an exception because Instagram does support HDR video. Any video on Facebook is going to be Rec 709 or sRGB. They are the same color space, but sRGB is slightly brighter. The white point is slightly different. So usually, it used to be you had to put out things that you wanted to play on the internet, sRGB. If you did Rec 709, it would be too dark. That's fixed now, so it doesn't matter. But they are fairly limited in the depth of color. As you can see, you can get, you know, pretty good reds, pretty good blues, but as far as the deepest green possible, it's far and away from being that full gamut of colors there. And then when you've heard me talk about HDR, there's two different standards for the color space. There's P3, or otherwise known as DCI P3, which is kind of in between Rec 2020, which is what I tend to work in, and Rec 709. You can see just how much more color there is in Rec 2020 than Rec 709. So when you have a camera that can capture that, there's a shit ton more information. But for the most part, everything that you see in video is going to be Rec 709. Unless you have cinema cameras laying around, every camera you have is capturing Rec 709, with the exception of some cell phones. I know the iPhone with its discount Dolby Vision records Rec 2020 HLG. It's a Dolby Vision profile. It's only 10-bit though, so. But I know like a couple of Android phones record Rec 2020 as well, so they've got decent sensors in them. But color spaces are just, you know, you got to pick one, and then you work around inside that. It's not as important as what I'm about to get into right now, though, which is log formats. The reason why I spent so much time on log formats in this particular presentation is because I talk a lot about DP log or GoPro log. Let's see there. Oh, hey, Koala. Welcome in, bro. Appreciate it. Thanks for stopping in. Yeah, the A7S III has some excellent capabilities. A lot of mirrorless cameras are capable of capturing P3 or Rec 2020 or what's called truncated Rec 2020, which is it's an in-between kind of thing. It's faking the funk, but it's good enough for government work. Now I totally lost my train of thought there. Oh, log formats. So you guys hear me talk about GP log all the time, right? GoPro's new log profile that they've stuffed in there in the Hero 12, and I've talked about creating your own log profile in the Hero 10 and 11, which we can go through in greater detail. But when I started going through it before, I lost everybody, unfortunately. So log format is a type of video footage format designed to maximize the dynamic range. Remember what we talked about before? Being able to capture the deepest shadow and the highest highlight all at the same time, like how far in brightness that range is. That's your dynamic range. Captured by the camera sensor, it's essentially a flat, desaturated image that looks washed out and contains a wealth of information in the shadows and highlights. The main goal of log format is to preserve as much detail as possible, particularly in areas that would typically be overexposed or underexposed in standard formats. This gives colorists more flexibility and creative control in post-production. Thanks, I appreciate that. Yeah, so log essentially takes the stuff that would normally be too dark to recognize, or like blowing out too bright, and squishes it down into the area of the sensor that has the most range for exposure. There's a little bit of a compromise in it, but not a whole lot. That's why log formats are crucial. You know, some of the characteristics are, it's going to be low contrast. It looks super flat, right? Log footage appears low in contrast. This is intentional as it captures a wider range of luminance levels. So luminance is light. You'll hear me talk about luminance. You'll hear me talk about chrominance or chroma. Chrominance is color. Luma or luminance is light. So we've heard of like monitors or cell phones have a peak brightness of nits. That's luminance. So it's different than print. In print, there is no luminance because it's purely a reflective type of medium. The core colors are different, the color spaces are different, and how to get the perceptive colors is a completely different science. So that's why I don't do print. So everything that we do is about light emission. Totally lost it. Anyway, Luma, Chroma. Wider range of luminance levels. Desaturated colors. Colors look muted in log. This is because it spreads the color information across a broader range, avoiding clipping or losing details. So when it looks really flat, it looks like the information is just not there. So Koala asks, do I overexpose by X amount of stops when using GoPro log? No, I do not. So what he's talking about is it's a photography method called exposing to the right, and that makes zero sense until I teach you guys about histograms. So no, I don't expose to the right in the GoPro. I haven't needed to. Some people are actually exposing to the left with the GoPro, but they're also not using log profiles or any kind of custom non-spaced color. So I have no idea. So Flexo asks, is log like raw in GoPro or on a phone or different things? So raw is a very different thing. Log is just it's a compression of the gamma. So it pushes everything towards the middle of the exposure range as much as possible. It brings the shadows up, it takes the highlights down and mushes them all together to try to capture as much information as possible. A raw format in cinema, like true raw, is actually just taking the data that comes off the sensor and putting it straight into a file. Raw gives you the most flexibility possible because there's no compression, there's no translation or what's called debayering from the actual sensor data into an image. It hasn't been turned into an image yet. So you've heard, if you've ever used Lightroom or Photoshop, there's a develop process. It's actually taking that sensor data and interpreting it. But it also gives you the most color information and the most exposure information possible, then having an actually encoded format. So raw is very different from log, but they're not mutually exclusive. For instance, Blackmagic Design Film is a log format that is used in their raw, in the raw format. So they're not mutually exclusive. But also Blackmagic RAW is not actually raw. It's a compressed raw, compressed codec. They call it raw, but it's not actually raw because Red owns the patent for compressed raw, and they're assholes about it. So, but anyway, true raw is just the sensor data, the ones and zeros that came right off the sensor. There's no way to interpret it as an image yet. There's no log profile. There's no color space yet. It's just the binary data that came off the sensor when it scanned through. Which is cool because you can do things like changing the ISO after the fact. You can set the white balance after the fact non-destructively, which is cool. So log is a gamma curve, right? If we go back to, where's that slide? If we go back to this, these are gamma curves right here. These are HLG hybrid log gamma curves, and they're slightly different. And in terms of like they're bringing the shadows up. So normally you would see this line here would just go straight across from 0 on both axes all the way up to the top corner, which I can't point to. And so having that gamma curve, that logarithmic curve, brings the shadows up into an area of the camera sensor where it's more sensitive, has more stops of sensitivity there than down in the shadows. That right there, Koala, is probably the best explanation. I tend to use too many words, so I appreciate you helping folks out. So yes, characteristics. So flat appearance, right? We talked about that before. It looks flat and lifeless before grading. When you're an experienced colorist, it looks like a clean canvas onto which you can do your art. But it can also be a little overwhelming for somebody who's new. You bring log footage in, you don't know what to do with it. It looks like there's nothing there when in reality everything is there. It's just kind of hiding. Working with log formats, this is like with log especially, this is where you really split up your technical grade from your color grade. So your color correction, which is the first step is usually basic color correction. It includes adjusting exposure, contrast, and white balance to bring the log footage closer to a natural look. Yeah, Koala, it is very technical and hard to put simply. The problem is I overthink it, and I'm trying my best to not throw 10,000 words at everybody and go over anyone's head. And I have no idea. Maybe it's just like I just have the dumb today, so I appreciate it, dude. Hey, Matt, what's going on? Welcome to the fun. Appreciate you stopping in at the parents' house playing some poker. Cool. Win some money for me. You've probably also heard of D-Log LUTs. Now, if you know me for more than a couple of minutes, you know that I detest LUTs. The biggest reason is LUTs, especially D-Log LUTs, actually discard information. And my workflow is all about preserving information as long as possible, all the way up until the point where you go to delivery. We don't want to throw away the things that we're not using. So that is how a lot of compression works. So like the difference between a PNG and a JPEG, right? A PNG file has a lot more information in it that you can't see, right? The JPEG slices all that extra information that you can't see off and leaves you only with what you can see, and that's why the file is so much smaller. So, in my opinion, applying a 3D LUT for D-Log, which is destructive, it permanently changes, maps color values and luminance values. It's usually specific to certain cameras. There's not like a D-Log LUT for everything. There's a red log, right? S-Log, D-Log. There's the GP log LUTs, right? LUTs are for babies. Thank you, Bart. So yeah, conversion LUTs can be helpful. I have found, yeah, -20. I appreciate that, Kimmy. D-Log LUTs can be helpful if you are going through the same process repeatedly with a specific correction. You can create your own LUT to do what you know you're going to get rid of anyway. You can go ahead and do that. But if you're coming against footage where you don't know yet what you're going to do creatively, you want to avoid discarding any data. And LUTs tend to do that. So, hey, sure, no problem, Flexo. No problem at all. Yeah, it's my thing. And I'm only going to make fun of you for a little bit. In my opinion, there's a difference between a technical LUT, so like a D-Log LUT, and a creative LUT. These color bros on the YouTubes that are like, buy my LUT pack because you're lazy shit and you don't want to learn, or I'm more interested in exploiting you for $1 than actually helping you learn something, right? I don't sell LUTs. I don't make LUTs. I'd rather take the time and teach you guys how to grade yourself, and hopefully one day you'll pass it on as well. So, yeah. The creative grade comes after the corrections. I mean, that's really kind of universal across any type of footage. It's not necessarily exclusive to log. I mean, even if you just take something straight off of, you know, a non-log footage off your phone or something like that, right? You're going to do some kind of correction before you start working on the creative look. With log, it's a little bit more obvious because you need to do something about the washed out flat image before you can do something creative. So the color correction part is a little bit more obvious. Different types of log format. Sony has S-Log, Panasonic has V-Log, Canon has C-Log, Fuji, whoever uses Fuji, has F-Log, Blackmagic has BMD Film, there's Red Log, there's Ari-Log, there's all kinds of logs. I mean, Filmic, the stupid-ass app for iOS and Android, that has a log profile in it. Apple has a log profile in the iPhone 15. For whatever reason, I don't get access to it on my phone because I'm not cool enough. Yeah, there's logs all over the place. So many logs, you could build a cabin. Hey. So the importance in cinematography, dynamic range, that's probably the biggest thing. Being able to squeeze as much dynamic range out of any particular camera, sensor, or platform as possible it's going to maximize your flexibility with the camera and also enable you as a colorist to help tell that story. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. LUTs. Oh, Koala. You and me are buddies, dude. We have the same opinion. Yeah, throwing on a LUT at 100%, calling it a day it's just a big slap in the face to color science. But I mean, also, at the end of the day, what you do with your footage is your business, and if it makes you happy and you feel fulfilled with what you produce, more power to you. I'm not going to tell you can't do it. I don't tell people that there's a wrong way to do these things. I tell people there's 1.5 billion different ways to get to the same thing, and you can either do it the same way I do it, but eventually you'll figure out something I don't know. You'll find a shortcut. You'll find something that seems easier to you, and you'll do it your way to get to the same thing. There's no wrong way to do it. There's a good way and a bad way, but there's 1,001 different good ways to get to the exact same image. So I am not the end-all be-all of colorists. I'm just a colorist, and that's all I have to say about that. So post-production flexibility, like we just talked about, log formats. Yeah. Don, I love the log. Log formats are, you know, giving when you're acquiring in a log format, especially if you're just the operator, you're just the cinematographer, and you want to make the colorist's job as easy as possible because you're taking your direction from the director of photography, who's taking their direction from the director, and cumulatively you're all trying to tell a story, and everybody has a different part of it, so we all want to be able to be on the same page. So that flexibility is going to be crucial. Color tools and scopes. So here's the part where I'm going to go ahead and open up Resolve, and we're going to talk a little bit about some of these tools. I know I've talked about them before, just kind of like passing by them, but we're actually going to look at some of these guys. So what's a good one? We'll just take a fresh one. So let's go here. Whoop. So let me put some footage in here so I can actually show you what some of this horseshit does. I don't have any stabbed footage there. No, let's just do the thing. Oh hell. There we go. Got something. Okay. Okay, so we got this horse shit. And let me turn that down. So we go to the color page here. We have a little look-see. Let me pull up. So the key elements here: color wheels and curves. They're both the good kind of curves and, you know, curvy curves. So flopping back over to here, the first thing that you have is your curves, right? So by default, it's going to be affecting all of your... Oh, I got to put something on the timeline first. I'm a dumb. There we go. Okay, so first it's just like, this is your histogram, and there's a definition in the glossary for it. The histogram basically shows your distribution of colors across luminance values. So the left side being darker, the right side being higher. And this is that curve that I was showing you in the graph. This is what's called linear curve. And then you can pull the shadows up. You see it kind of just makes that, you know, white. You can take the highlights down. You can take the highlights up. You can change the curve to logarithmic. You can go anti-log. All right, so curves is kind of how you're going to work with contrast, mostly, if you're dealing with one specific, like you're dealing with your luminance. So you see YRGB here. Y is the letter for luminance. So if I turn, like if I just select my red here, I can screw with just my red channel here and kind of separate that curve out. And there's all kinds of, it gets overwhelming pretty quick. I would recommend not starting with your curve. So there's your there's your white point. You can fuck with that too. I wouldn't start with messing with your curves. It takes time to get used to them. And there's a lot of things like the contrast wheel and the pivot and the shadows and the highlights. These things are just convenient things to do something to this, right? So bring your shadows up. That's how you bring your shadows up. On the, when I actually use all of them there. All right, so same idea here. If I actually, so that brings your shadows up. So curves are kind of a manual way of doing what you can do with a lot of other things. And then if we talk about the color wheels. So the color wheels, I think everybody's seen the color wheels in Resolve at one point in their life. There's two sets of color wheels. There's the regular color wheels, which these little wheels down here, you can mess with the actual intensity of that particular area. So lift, gamma, gain. It's old-timey terminology from like the film era, right? Lift is basically your shadows, gamma is basically your midtones, and gain is basically your highlights. Oh, I didn't put my scopes back to SDR, so that's fun. As a matter of fact, this is not going to look right for you guys because my default is HDR. There we go. Okay. So yes, and then you can also tone any of these. So you can tone your shadows. It does look like it tones the entire thing, but it tones. It starts in the shadows and kind of bleeds off into the gamma and the gain. Now, something that makes a little bit more sense is the logarithmic wheels, because it literally says shadow, midtone, and highlights. So if I start messing with this, it's just my shadows. You can barely even see it because there's hardly anything that it considers shadow. Midtones, just the midtones. And highlights, which this thing is mostly highlights, right? Just messes with your highlights. And offset, if you look at the scope over here, just moves this whole thing up and down. It's basically an exposure wheel. So, yes. Only thing I've ever done is raise or lower the ends on linear. It's not too dark or too light. Yeah. I mean, I've done that when I've done, what movie was it? Edge of Tomorrow. I did a regrade on Edge of Tomorrow. Was it Edge of Yeah, it was Edge of Tomorrow. The film with Emily Blunt, Tom Cruise. I did a regrade on that one. And a lot of that was just grabbing the bottom here and like fixing it so the shadows were where they were supposed to be and the highlights were where they were supposed to be. Somebody else had already done all the corrective work. I was doing a post-grade correction to make it look better. Make it look more better. Quad Mafia. So I have completely hoopa-jooped this clip here. So heading back over to Le PowerPoint. So we've talked about color wheels and curves. So now we're going to get into the scopes. So let's start with the waveform. Let me merge that. And I'm probably going to have to get my stupid face out of the way. So this is a waveform monitor. Actually, no, I can do. I just pop that out. I can pop out all the scopes. And I'm just going to go ahead and start this looping here. So you can see if you, once you get like, it's kind of like reading the Matrix, right? Once you get good, you can actually see what's happening in the scene by watching the wave monitor, the waveform monitor. It's really strange. The Koala says, I think a huge aspect lacking in the FPV community in general is video editing knowledge, which includes exposing an image first, then corrections and looks in post. Yeah, absolutely. And you're kind of hitting on the whole reason I'm doing this is because I just get more and more frustrated watching other people's videos when I'm like on streams and whatnot, and I was just being an elitist asshole and be like, well, that looks like ass. It doesn't, you know, some people can make up for it with their freestyle skills or their flight skills, but when somebody is like hashtag cinematic and then in the next breath hashtag no stab, which means no lens distortion correction, I start to twitch a little bit. But it wasn't until recently I had decided that, hey, maybe instead of just complaining about it, how about I actually do something that's helpful, instead of just being, you know, a dick about it. So that's why we're here. I'm trying to give back, and I think you really hit that nail on the head, Koala. So we got our waveform, and why do we have two waveforms? Parade. And I like to, okay. So your waveform is essentially, if you take your parade, which has your luminance value, your red, your green, your blue values in separate columns, if you smash them on top of each other, you get your waveform. And then vectorscope, which is something that's useful for, basically it's a saturation color relationship. If you look on the color wheel, right, red is here, yellow's here, green is here, cyan, black, magenta. This is helpful in picking your white balance, but especially, I don't know, I have that there. Skin tone indicator. So most vectorscopes have a skin tone indicator, which tells you where in a shot you should have your skin tones, right? So your person doesn't, you know, the talent that you have on camera is not purple or blue or, you know, some kind of weird color. The reason why the skin tone indicator is static and never moves is because, newsflash, everybody's the same fucking color. Everybody's a different intensity of the same color. So yeah. Most of the time, I think for FPV, nobody's going to really be using the vectorscope unless they're trying to eyeball white balance. There's a way we can do that, and I'll probably get into that next week. We talk about white balance and some of those correction things as it relates to FPV. And then you have your histogram, which I think a lot of you guys have seen in one form or another on, let's see, there we go. You know, you see this on your camera a lot, right? And so this is the distribution of intensity across your brightness. It's basically the same thing as these, it's just turned sideways. It can be a little bit easier to read though. And the numbers on the side here, for me, these are nits. And right now they're not even accurate because I'm in SDR mode. I'd have to change my, I think, okay, no, that doesn't work. I gotta go into the actual settings and disable the HDR scopes. What that skin tone line do? Well, I don't know if I got a clip. Oh shit, that's gonna be. It's gonna be way back there. Oh no, on the raw files. Okay. So basically, it lets you make sure that you're honoring the skin tones. Oh Jesus Christ, Koala, you're fucking with me, man. I couldn't see the damn emoji. So everything's small on that monitor. You bastard. You know what the skin tone line does? It does fuck you. That's what it does. Yeah, you got me, dude. So this would normally be 0 through 1024 for normal video, and it's in nits for HDR. And this is important when you're doing HDR because now you're talking about the actual brightness that something is supposed to be on the screen, regardless of the display. So when you grade something and you make skin tones, which are usually supposed to be around 70 to 100 nits, it's going to be 70 to 100 nits on any TV that adheres to the HDR standard. So regardless if that TV is a 5,000 nit peak brightness, or you know, a bog standard computer monitor with about 250 nit peak brightness, it's always going to be 100 nits as long as that monitor or display adheres to the HDR standards. Enjoy laughing at me, Kimmy. I got a lot of feelings, okay? Oh my god. So yeah, we talked about the waveform. Displays the luminance of the image, helping to ensure proper exposure and balance across the frame. Vectorscope, it shows the hue and saturation of colors in the image, ensuring accurate skin tones and color consistency. Histogram, this displays the distribution of shadows, midtones, and highlights, helping to avoid clipping and loss of detail in the image. That's actually one of the things that's really great about the histogram, is it's really easy to tell if you've got blown out highlights or crushed shadows, meaning the data is lost. That's why you tend to see histograms more at time of acquisition in the camera, and less, you're using them a lot less in color grading, because if your highlights are gone, there's very little you can do unless you're shooting with a raw format. There's very little you can do to get your highlights back. But if you're trying to push your highlights, you can also kind of push them up against that limit there. So let me close that. We'll go back. Oh, we're already here. Okay. So let me pull this up. Glossary terms. I ain't reading this shit to you. I wrote it. You can download the file, and you can get all that shit yourself. I know I use a lot of words, and I've been doing this so long that I forget that I'm basically speaking another language. And Flexo, it was really you last week that kind of, that light bulb finally went off in my head, and I'd be like, hey, I'm not doing this right. You know what I mean? So I needed to really take a step back and make sure that I'm talking with people and not at people. So that's the PowerPoint. That's the whole spiel there. Everybody managed to survive the PowerPoint. I hope. Oh god. So yeah, we got this fancy fancy clip here. This was shot with a Hero 11. It is a custom log profile in the GoPro Labs firmware. It's very light log. It's not even as aggressive as GP log is in the Hero 12. It's very light. The flat profile does do a good job of creating a logarithmic gamma curve. Oh, I'm glad, guys. I really appreciate that. That's very kind of you. That makes me feel special. Get double learnt. Well, that's kind of the thing, right? I'm gonna make the PowerPoint available to download. These will always stay on my channel. It's not like you have to watch it now or it's gone forever. Like eventually there's going to be a whole ass library of these live streams people can watch. And so it's gonna be that thing. So what's eventually going to happen for those of you who want to participate, I'm going to start giving you homework, right? I'm going to give you clips to work with and have you actually grade them and then submit them. I'll give you space to upload them and everything. You don't have to worry about any of that shit. But I'm going to give you homework. There is the free version of DaVinci Resolve that's good enough for basic color grading. You can't do a whole lot of the GPU accelerated stuff. Can't do 120 frames per second. Yeah, just got back. Brett, good job. You catch the emotes as they go by? So yeah, you know, it's not just, I want it to be a two-way street, a two-way journey, right? So you guys get to take some footage back, play with it, and work with it in the same way that I would work with it and see what you can come up with. And then we can go through it together. And I'm, you know, always in the Discord if you got any questions. You know, you can just hit me up, be like, hey, I know that you went over this and I don't want to go through the whole live video, but what the fuck does this thing do again? Just got the version for pores. Yeah, I mean, what is it, $295 for the lifetime license or buy a cinema camera? I thought, and I think I'm mistaken, I thought I had an extra license. I was going to gift a license to somebody, but it turns out I do not have an extra license, or I can't find it, as I have two Blackmagic cameras. So, fuck, man, I don't know. Because I've got the one, for me it came on a little like credit card type thing, the license key, and I just keep that in my wallet. And it's worked everywhere I've gone to install it, so it's a little bit silly. I think I might give you guys a Hero 11 clip to play with first. So look out for that in the description. I will edit the description. Oh yeah, Flexo. Dude, your shit breaks my brain, man. I just can't watch you fly. It hurts my brain flying around upside down and shit. Yeah, you can get a cracked version. Your mileage may vary, so I'll leave it at that. Is it lost on my clean desk? No, I'm pretty sure it's not on my desk. It's probably in a box someplace in the basement. Because I probably unpacked the second camera and I was like, oh, I don't need this. I'm just going to put it back in the box. Because I keep all the boxes. That's basically what my basement is, just boxes. Or boxing, as I like to say. So, I'm not going to tell you not to. I used to be a pretty big prolific pirate. I don't really have a need to do that anymore. I don't know what's out there. Just be careful, be mindful. You can't hold me accountable if you get ransomware in your shit. It's not my problem. Not my circus, not my monkey. But for grading, for color grading, it's good enough. The clips I give you will still be able to play decently well. You know, they'll play just fine on the free version. You know, basic color grading and color correction doesn't require any of the GPU enabled effects or any of that sort of shit. It's just all this stuff down here that you're used to seeing, right? So For me here, I probably flip over to my vectorscope. I do a 2x zoom. My temperature, so I wiggle it around so I can see where white is. Put white in the middle, and I adjust the tint until that hits the cross, and I've hit my white balance. That's good enough. It looks all right. Yes, Kimmy, I am drinking an energy drink at 9 p.m. because that's why. So we will get into basic corrections next week. I will give you, maybe not this file, but I'll give you guys a file to play with coming up to next week. There's nothing due for next week. If you do want to edit one of the files and then upload it to YouTube, or you can upload it to the place I'll give you to upload it, let me take a look at it. I'm happy to take a look at it. I'll give you critique. Really? Wow. That's new. Well, I'm not going to advocate for it, but I'm saying if you do it, I'd understand. You're not going to get any shame from me, but if you get ransomware on your shit, I'm going to point and laugh. So you take on that risk of your own accord, but believe me, I understand. I mean, as software goes, Resolve is still the cheapest and the biggest bang for your buck. Not everyone's got $300 laying around. I get it. So just do me a favor, try the free version first and see if it does what you need it to do. And then if that doesn't work, then you can try some other options. So okay, so questions? Does people have questions about color theory or color science? Oh, that's funny. Yeah. Now, the malware that was in the world during Napster and LimeWire is nothing compared to what's out there now. Yeah, here's a sad thing, Bart. I've had the subscription to the Adobe Master Collection for, well, since they had a subscription. My wife uses all the photography shit. Occasionally, I need After Effects or Audition or Bridge. I don't know. Photoshop a lot, though. I do a lot of Photoshop. Koala, you have a question, sir. What can I do you for? I like that you raised your hand. That's awesome. I love this delay. This delay's awesome. If you got questions, just blurt them out. I don't want to have to wait for you to type them. Yeah, Photoshop's definitely a good to have. I mean, there's tons of free alternatives out there, but I've been using Photoshop since the early 90s. Maybe late 80s. Well, Koala. Jesus fucking Christ. This comment. Well, take your saturation slider and fucking turn that shit all the way down, because this has got no saturation in it. I appreciate that. This beard is just out of pure laziness, I guess. I just kind of like trim around my mouth so I don't eat my beard when I have a sandwich. That's pretty much all the maintenance I put into it. And everyone's like, dude, your beard is so epic. And my wife's like, you should use beard oil. And I'm like, I don't have a top knot. I'm not one of those fucking hipster guys. You know what I'm saying? So, I don't know, man. I appreciate it. That was pretty funny. Need to learn over Bart's shoulder. Hey, I appreciate that, dude. Yeah, I appreciate that. That's the goal. I just want to put it out there. Not putting anything behind any paywalls. Not asking anything of anybody. It's freely available. Free for you to share as well. You know, whatever you learn, feel free to teach the next person. That's what it's all about for me. So, anyway, guys, if you guys don't have any other technical questions about my beard or otherwise, I think we will go ahead and call it an evening. And just as a reminder, the oils smell funny. Yeah, dude, I don't know if I want to smell like a tree stump or fucking like a fern in the Pacific Northwest forest. Or, I don't know, dude. Bart. That's great, dude. How I set my DaVinci settings. So that's kind of a loaded question because my application is different than most people. So my defaults. Yeah, you too, Koala. Really awesome. Appreciate you coming by and hanging out with us. So my defaults are HDR, PQ, and grading for 1000 nits. So the monitor I'm looking at over here that's currently acting as an extra monitor is actually my grading monitor. I can't actually show you what's on the grading monitor because it's connected to the DaVinci, the Blackmagic DeckLink monitor card. That's another thing, you know, when you start getting into, if you start doing this professionally, you have to be very careful about color accuracy. It doesn't matter how great you can get your monitor calibrated, your GPU is always going to fuck with your color in one way or another. This is why Blackmagic makes that output card that bypasses the GPU and goes straight out. And that's how you get the most accurate representation of what you're doing, is by going around Windows, going around Mac OS, going around whatever GPUs in the machine. There's a lot of image processing that happens before it goes onto the monitor. So for casual stuff on YouTube, right, you got a flight video, you don't need a grading monitor. If you're delivering footage to a director, you're gonna want a grading monitor. It's really tough to get it right and consistent and accurate without it. So to answer your question, Bart, like my settings are different. So most of my stuff starts out as HDR grades. And then my general options. What do I, and that's up here. So I set my video format on my video monitoring to 2160p 24 12-bit color, and I turn on HDR metadata. That means nothing to nobody for the most part, right? So I don't use proxies. I don't generate optimized media. Even Red Raw or Blackmagic Raw plays like smooth as silk on my machine. So I do have some cache files, locations, and then like the defaults here for frame interpolation, retime, process, and nearest, just to keep it quick. How should I set up my DaVinci? Well, that depends on what you want to do, dude. Right? I mean, those crazy Apple monitors. I haven't actually gotten to see one of those monitors, Koala. Chances are the thing I'm going to say is they're horrifically overpriced. But the one advantage that macOS has over Windows for color grading is like this viewer right here on the main window of Resolve. In Windows, I will never get to see this in HDR. Regardless of the fact that Windows supports HDR and my monitor supports HDR, this will never be HDR. On Mac, you can turn that on as long as you have a monitor profile. And since you're using a Mac monitor, you know, it's going to have a monitor profile, so you'll get relatively accurate HDR. So 980M, holy shit. Editing at low res. Yeah. So Bart, I mean, as far as how to set it up, I mean, my projects are always 2160 by, or 3840 by 2160. And I use the built-in color manage. So by default, out of the box, you're just going to get YRGB. And this means that it's unmanaged YRGB. It's going to assume that your timeline is going to be Rec 709 and that you're going to render Rec 709. Color managed means, in this case, the automatic color management, which is super awesome. You know, you kind of decide what you want to do. Are you going to grade in SDR and deliver HDR, which is actually a thing? Or, you know, you're going to do your grading, your processing in HDR. And the way this happens, like, the reason for this is it dictates how the tools respond. So, that's pretty much it. It doesn't actually change much about the experience, but this obviously matters. You got 3 different color space options for SDR, and then you have 2 different HDR options, HLG or hybrid log gamma, which is a type of HDR video file that you can play on a normal SDR monitor or an HDR monitor, and it will look appropriate on both. HDR PQ will look dark and washed out on a normal monitor. So it just depends on your project. It depends on what you're trying to get to. Color space is what you're mostly. So in this particular, when you're using automatic color management, your color processing mode, you're just selecting the gamma. But if we got into separate color space of gamma, wait, no, I want to turn automatic color grading off. So it would be, no. That's new. Do that. So DaVinci Wide Gamut is what's used for your color processing mode when you're in automatic. It is the same as Adobe ProPhoto RGB. It's just all the fucking colors. So if you just leave this on automatic color management, you are going to get the absolute most out of the color spaces. The only thing you need to worry about is your delivery color space. You can deliver Rec 2020 and have it look okay. It might be a bit fiddly in the shadows, and you might have to, and shadows in the highlights, so you might have to screw with it. But Rec 20, you know, Rec 709, the standard, like we were talking before during the PowerPoint, the standard type of color space for most video that's consumed is going to be fine. And your color processing mode is automatically going to use the wide gamut. So it gives you an opportunity to add color that wasn't originally there in the first place. And that's kind of where, if you want to take SDR footage, like regular 8-bit footage off of like a cell phone and do an HDR grade with it, you could theoretically do that and create new colors in the expanded color space to get more what's called color volume. If you've seen, like, you know, if you have an HDR TV, like the deep reds, and it's so red, it's just so fucking red, that's color volume. That's something that you don't get in Rec 709, because the red is just meh, just meh red, meh. But in Rec 2020, red is really fucking red, like just eyeball searing red. Even though it's not particularly bright, it has a lot of color volume. So you're going to get the most out of your colors just by leaving it on automatic, and you just need to decide what you're delivering. So Bart, you know, for the most part, you want to do SDR Rec 709, and then that's it. That's all you need to worry about. And if you bring in a clip that is from a different color space, it will automatically get adapted to your current timeline color space, which is super cool. So if you have, you know, something that's linear out of After Effects or an HDR clip from a whatever, you could just slap it in there. It'll look fine. You don't have to convert it to SDR or vice versa. It just works. So don't bother with Dolby Vision unless you have their $100,000 Dolby Vision renderer. HDR10 Plus is only good if you have multiple scenes. HDR Vivid is some weird Chinese HDR format that nobody in the world uses. I have no idea why it's in here. And then you can actually apply LUTs to different aspects of the resolve. You can put LUTs on input, you can put LUTs on output, you can put a LUT on your video monitor, on your color viewer, which would be on the color page. You can do all kinds of wacky ass shit. And then if you're doing stuff for broadcast, then you would hit make broadcast safe. And that helps you avoid things like, what was that? Season 7, Game of Thrones. There was that one episode that was so fucking dark, nobody had any clue what was going on. I don't know. That 980 will run GTA 5? Holy shit. Well, you know, I don't really believe you, Bart, but I'll take your word for it, dude. The exact amount of words. I am verbose AF, so, yeah. Just leave it on automatic, dude. It'll do everything you used to have to do manually. There's no point in doing it manually nowadays. You can learn about it. That's cool. You might flip it over to manual just so you can manually deal with these things, and you know, maybe in week 100 we'll start talking about ACES, and ACES is a beast, absolute beast. I use it for high-end stuff and not for my YouTube stuff, but yeah. Yeah, dude, that Game of Thrones episode, oh my god. So, you should have heard it, dude. I was screaming at my TV when that episode was on. I actually sent an email to the colorist that worked on it. I was like, have you ever heard of Broadcast Safe? Like, seriously. And, of course, I didn't get a reply because I'm just me. I'm just a guy. Just some asshole on the internet. But like the memes were great, you know, but to make Broadcast Safe, that one was great. I know what happened with it. I know what he did. What went wrong in delivery had to do with the video data levels and not making it, not adhering to broadcast standards. So it came out too dark once it was displayed. But it will go down in infamy as one of the worst graded episodes of anything on HBO. Yeah. Fun times. Okay, any other questions that I can answer with the exact amount of words? Anybody want to know my gratuitous, what my opinion of the gratuitous use of the word Belgium in classical cinema is? Did I take the bus or did I pack a lunch? Nobody knows. Oh, so yes, the show's going weekly. Next weekend, so I'm not big into Christmas, which is why I'm fine doing this on Christmas Eve. Next week is New Year's Eve. I'm a little bit bigger on New Year's Eve, especially because I like to listen to the police scanner and listen to all the insanity that happens around my neighborhood. So, we will not have a show next week. We will have a show the following weekend, the first weekend in January. I know a lot of people are more excited for New Year's than they are for Christmas, especially in their adult lives. But I didn't want to. I'm surprised I had so many people come on Christmas Eve. So I think that's pretty fucking cool. Y'all are amazing. But next weekend we will not have a show. We'll have the show the week after, and it will be every week. So that gives me a little bit extra time to maybe do another fucking PowerPoint. I don't know. Hopefully the PowerPoint wasn't too painful. I at least tried to use like different colors and shit. So, you know, purple and blue. It'd be fucked up for New Year's. Yeah, I don't know if I'm gonna do that. I'm probably just gonna listen to the radio. Yeah, damn you and taking your personal time to do stuff and junk. Fro shizzle. Nah, so I will, if you're not in, shit, hold on a sec. Hold on a second. I gotta figure this shit out. Just give me the goddamn... Let's go to one of my fucking content. That one. And I'll grab the stupid... Oh, of course. I don't have it in this one. Stupid. Yeah. There we go. I'm gonna post this in the chat. Yeah, I was like going around my ass to get to my elbow, huh? I appreciate that, Bart. And here is a link to the Discord. I will send a message in the Discord when I have the description for this live stream updated with the PowerPoint and with some sample footage that you can use of your own Discord, of your own Accord. See what I did there? And yeah, so with all that, thank you all very much for hanging out with me this evening. My voice is gone and my eyeballs hurt, so I will get better at this, I promise. But yeah, thank you very much for hanging out with me. Please feel free to hit me up on the Discord if you got more questions. You guys know I always try to answer as quickly as possible, and all that fun stuff. So, okay. Love you. Bye.